We're going to have a panel, and you'll be able to ask anything you want to any of the speakers.
No lotto numbers.
No lotto numbers, okay. Okay. Well, you've just heard Dr. Bonnet. He spoke both days, and you heard Justine this morning. Okay. And the other beautiful lady here is Christine Ramos. She was the registered nurse who was the obstetric nurse who wrote the book about babies and how to honor your children in spirit when they're first coming in and how to identify with them from babies all the way up and when they're growing. So she spoke yesterday.
And Aaron said he liked her talk so much, he's thinking of having babies again, Doris.
Okay.
Oh, she fainted.
Okay. And this other good-looking man here is, I'm still going to call you Father Pat. I don't care what you say. He is the former Catholic priest. He was a Catholic priest for 15 years. And he started our conference off yesterday, and he had everybody crying with his beautiful singing.
Yeah.
But he spoke on how he left the Catholic Church and how you can still have the church and also have spirituality for those who weren't here. So this is trying to show you can have everything. You don't have to, we're not off in woo-woo land here, that you can live a normal life and be spiritual and have metaphysics. And this gentleman is a legend. This is Aaron Abramson. Back in the 70s and the 80s, he was doing the work very similar to Edgar Casey, to where he was going into the Akashic records and trance, and he did over 8,000 readings. And when he retired, right after a few years ago, he had a stroke, and after the stroke, he had to learn to speak again and to learn the entire English language again. So I said there was another very big challenge that he conquered that. Right. And he says, since he's been here, he feels like he's alive again.
Yeah.
Back doing what he loves. And I said, his career is not over.
Right.
Okay. So at a panel, usually we ask questions from the audience. I've got a few in case you don't think of any, but I think you're going to find plenty. But you can ask about religion and put Father Pat on the spot.
Said, who are you?
Oh, who am I?
Yeah.
I think most people know who I am. I don't know. I'm Dolores Cannon. I'm the owner of Ozark Mountain Publishing, and I'm the one who has published all these books that you see out there. But also I'm a hypnotherapist, and I've been doing past life regression for over 30 years. And I'll be doing the last talk tonight, so I'll be going into more about my work and what I do. But I just figured everybody knew me. I'm always thinking about the other ones. But anyway, if you want to ask religious questions, you can put Father Pat on the spot. You want to ask medical questions, you can put Dr. Bonnet and Christine on the spot. Because I said yesterday, I think we're all a bunch of rebels because they're all rebelling against the establishment. They started out in the establishment, and then they found there was more to go, more to add, more questions to ask. And even Christine is against what the obstetricians and all of them are doing. So we are going in a different direction. So maybe we're the new breed, but I think it's very good. Yeah, I think so too. And then we have Justine and her wonderful work with the tarot. Yeah. And Aaron. I think you're going to be able to find questions that you can direct to any of them. Okay, so who wants to go first and ask anything you want? Here's John back here. Okay. He's our wonderful artist that designs all
Isn't
of
he
our
great?
covers.
Yeah!
Yeah,
He did my book cover. Great.
fantastic.
And yours.
I wanted to ask Father.
Do you have any kids?
No kids.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you a question. It seemed, what I've read, and I don't really know everything, but it seemed like religion's lost its spirituality, and in the beginning, people who had religion or spirituality seemed to have a more positive outlook on where they were going or what could be. The modern church, especially here in the West, has sometime, I don't know when, maybe you can help me with that, but they suddenly started just basically saying, these are the rules. You have to follow them. And if you don't, you've got two choices for eternity. You got heaven or you got hell. At what point did that start happening? And why do you think that it's evolved and that is so strong these days? And is there anything that can be changed? Or is it only people?
Okay. It's a biggie.
It is a biggie.
Okay.
And it ties into a question that we were talking about the other night about a world of duality and the need for that duality. If you look, I just focus in on the Christian religion because that's what I'm most familiar with this lifetime. But the other religions also probably fall into the same pattern. But it seems to be that there's a pendulum going, a swing. When Jesus came down, I presume that one of the greatest things he wanted was for people to gather together as common believers to share this goodness and this greatness about Spirit, about God, about our relationship with that, which focuses in on spirituality, and share that and celebrate that to make life more meaningful. The pendulum started swinging, and you get into St. Augustine and a lot of those other early church fathers, because we don't have any publicity on the church mothers, but they started to get into more of the rules and regulations and defining how this community should start acting. The pendulum probably swung a little bit more, but then and got a little bit liberal, and then it came into the Inquisition and said, no, you got to start following the rules and our rules and regulations, probably from the belief system that they were losing power, and they perceived that that's what they were supposed to be here for, is to gain power and control. Whereas that wasn't the original belief system of Jesus or Mohammed or Buddha or anybody at all. And then it swung quite a bit, and all the other different religions started to begin. The Lutherans, the Methodists, the Episcopalians, the Baptists, all of the different denominations. And they had set up their own little communities with their beliefs, trying to free themselves from the oppression of the Catholics, who had too many rules and regulations. And then you find the pendulum swinging again, and for example, the fundamentalists are back in that same arena, the same side of the spectrum, which is very rigid and liberal. In the Catholic Church, what was his name? Pope John the 23rd, he let the pendulum swing way back over to this side, and they had Vatican II, and he said, let's open the windows of the church and let everybody breathe and celebrate in their own language. They took away the Latin. But a lot of people rebelled against that. And now we seem to be back into this conservative modality that is restricting people if they don't do this, if they don't believe in this rule or participate in this union of a male and a female in marriage, or if they don't go to their church. Or the fundamentalists have got there again, where they say if you don't follow the Bible and accept Jesus as your personal Savior, you're going to hell. So we seem to be in that rigid little, you said about the tumblers dropping in. Well, the tumblers in Earth reality have seemed to have dropped into a little bit of a rigidity mode. My belief system, though, and how we solve that problem is I'm a firm believer that times are changing, said Bob Dylan. Gosh, I'm old. You know
You
who
are,
that
but
is?
you're great.
That the times are changing, and they've been predicted for a long time, and the evidence, such as working with in Dolores' new book, The Convoluted Universe, Part 2, there is a new world that's ready to be created, and it's going to be a world without rules and regulations. And it's going to be a world where we treat each other equally, all of us, just as Jesus treated everybody equally. And there's going to be a world filled with love. I believe it can go on forever. Some people say it will be a 1,000-year swing in the pendulum again, and then it will go back just naturally to some duality and then come back again. But I believe that we're entering into a wonderful age where we as creator gods, even if we had cancer and the doctor said we're going to die tomorrow, we have that right to choose to be healed, to change our soul contract, and to continue to participate in this kingdom of God on earth. So I think it's really exciting, and I just believe that those people who are being very rigid are in a vibrational realm of their own, and that vibration is even going to change, or I'm going to choose to be in a higher vibrational rate where I will not interact with them anymore. We all have that choice. Thank you.
Good.
I have a question. Is that okay for you, for Dolores?
Well, for
I
me,
thought you meant for
okay.
me. The
You
Italian
too.
Catholic.
You too, the Italian Catholic. Do you guys think Iraq is the last war for us?
Dude, what?
All of you. Do you think Iraq is the Middle East is the last war?
Oh, the ones that are happening now?
Yep.
Well, in my books on Nostradamus, he said it could be a lot worse.
Okay.
You know, we could go into, atomic weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons, and it could have already been that way. I mean, that's how terrible it could be, and that's why he wanted us to know that, so we would keep it from going that far.
Do you think we're doing that?
I think we are, because we were supposed to have been, according to prophecies, in a much worse situation by now. I think, he always said, the future is not set in stone. That Eve saw the future as many probabilities and possibilities like branches. And they go off in different directions, and they come into a nexus point where something had to happen. And from there, it branched out again. If you knew what was going to happen, you could choose which path you wanted to walk down, and that's your future. You could either lessen the probability or make it worse, according to which one you wanted your future. And that the mind is so strong, people don't realize that they do create their reality. Everybody creates their own reality, and they don't like that because they don't like what's happening in their life. But once you realize what you have in your life you have put there, you can take it away. So the same is true of groups. If you realize what you can do with your mind, you can focus on peace and harmony, and that will be our reality. But if one person's mind is that strong, group mind, he said, is not only multiplied, it's squared. The power is tremendous if you get groups of people focusing on the opposite of what he saw. If you see them focusing on peace and harmony. And that's what I've been doing since the books came out. Well, they came out almost 20 years ago, in 1989. I've been traveling all over the world to tell people that they can keep these things from happening. I think it's working because they're not as bad as they could be. We're still having problems, but it's lesser than it could have been. So I think maybe we will keep it from getting to that point.
Thank you.
Because he said after we get through that, the time of troubles right now, then we will go into the time of the great genius and the wonderful inventions and space travel and the 1,000 years of peace. So we have to get through this time right now. That's what I found anyway.
And what a great question. If people even are asked that question, that Iraq could be the last war, the seed is being planted that there could be no more wars after Iraq. That's a fantastic possibility.
That is a great possibility. Yeah,
With Iran or things.
Actually, it feels that way to me. I feel like it's almost over, but I wondered what Nostradamus would say.
Well, it could escalate, but we want to keep it from doing that. You know, Aaron, you did predictions years ago also.
Yes.
Do you have any answer to that?
No, I really don't. I had the prediction I had to do with earth changes in consciousness,
Yeah.
and really I didn't think of the wars. I had other problems working.
Yeah.
What do you
It's
think?
all
What do you think in your
battle.
heart?
I hope that this will be the last war because we have other things to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, even in the Bible, Armageddon, and this sounds like what we're getting into that because that is supposed to be the last conflict.
I think the time is coming when people will come to their senses and they will see the futility of war and uprising, and one by one I believe that people will wake up and they will go to work laughingly together.
Because, you know, I travel all over the world. I was even in the Middle East before Christmas, and I just got back from a round the world trip in March. I see people in many, many countries, they're just like all of us.
Yeah.
I said, if more people traveled, there wouldn't be the prejudice, the fear, because they'd see everyone, we're all alike. We all want the same thing. We all want to take care of our families. We want to provide a good life. We want to have a good occupation. We don't want to go to war and kill people. None of them have ever said to me, we want to go out and fight. It's always the leaders.
You know, I remember in one of the life readings we did for Japan, there was a woman who had written in and said, I lost my husband during World War II. And we all think only the Americans lost their sons and their husbands. And here, when I read that letter, my heart went out to her, for she had lost a loved one. And then in the reading I said, well, your husband is safe. He is on the other side. And one day the two of you will meet. That's all I could say. You know.
Well, when I wrote the book, A Soul Remembers Hiroshima, one of my books, I was amazed because we didn't realize what the Japanese were going through.
Oh, yeah.
We were, brainwashed by propaganda. We were alive during World War II. They were the monsters.
Yeah.
But they were experiencing the same problems we were. They were starving. They didn't have their children, the young men, they came and took them from their homes and put them into this army. And a lot of these things people didn't know because they were the enemy. We weren't thinking about things like that. They were experiencing the same things and worse than we were.
Oh, yeah. And also, I found that people throughout the whole world, that people that we did readings for, they have the same hope and aspiration, and all of them, most of them, have the same central question: what is my purpose?
Yeah.
And I gave in the readings these words, that if you can give hope to one person, you are very successful. So we have to give hope to whoever they are, and knowing that there is a better world coming. But we have to go through this, whatever you call it,
This, like he says, a time of troubles, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's part of the world has karma also.
Oh, you tell me.
And the world is working out its karma before it can go into the other part.
Yeah. And the sooner we get rid of that or work that out, the sooner we can go into the next world. so let's all get busy.
I thought this morning of Dr. Gandhi when he said we use 45% of the world's resources. So when I went back in my room last night, I was very cautious. I didn't take a 20-minute shower like I always do. I thought if we can do, even if I do it, if you do, whoever does it, little things we can do, we shouldn't hog up all the world's resources. There's people out there that they're starving, and we're so blessed. And maybe it doesn't make a difference if we throw out that head of lettuce. Okay, who cares? But maybe we shouldn't have bought it in the first place. You know what I mean? And I just decided, after I heard Dr. Gandhi speak, I thought, I'm going to change some things. And one of them is going to be, I'm going to be much more appreciative of the resources of the earth.
Okay. OT, do you have anything to add to this?
We have a question over here.
Okay. All right. Who's over here? Let's get her first. Okay.
Okay, going along with all of this, with the peace, the war, the changing, and all that, this is for any of you or all of you. What is your comment on the Antichrist?
Oh.
Like, who do we think he is, you mean?
You first.
Do you really?
Ask the priest.
My own personal belief is that there are many, many levels of that. And I think one of the levels was highlighted to scare the people to behave and to get to church and to follow the rules and regulations. And on a personal level, though, all of us can act in an anti-Christ way. We're all called to be other Christ, other Gandhis, other Mohammeds, other Christ. And so Dolores has a good answer on this one.
Well, I only wrote 3 books about it. And that's what I lecture on all over the world. But even with the Nostradamus material, he said he didn't like the word Antichrist because it was a religious connotation. But he said if you think of Christ as representing humanity, that an Antichrist was someone who did horrible things against humanity. And the kind of a person who didn't have any morals, like Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun, that type of a personality. Someone who didn't care what happened to the world. And that's when I wrote the book about was the predictions of the one who was to come. But that would take, I've lectured on that for days. So, but we're trying to keep it suppressed and not allow the things to happen that we saw. Anyway.
In that respect, why should we fear the Antichrist? Isn't God stronger, more mightier? So what is there to fear, really? And also, I want to say something. Be aware that the Lord is coming, so look busy.
I love him. Oh my God, I sat with him for an hour and a half.
He's a wealth of bumper stickers.
I went to see him when you were born in the 70s.
Some of my mail says they think the Antichrist is Bush, so who knows?
His wife, oh my
Can
God.
be a number of.
We're not going to go there, though.
No.
Okay.
But then Dolores has been in a situation, I think she may talk about where she was doing a regression or in some situation where you knew that a very evil person was...
Yeah, but I don't want to get into that.
No, but the point of that is that if we focus out on love and keep on shining out the love, no negativity or anything can penetrate or get near us at all. We stay in our own loving world.
Yeah, it's not allowed anywhere near us as long as we're positive and work in the light.
Right.
Okay.
I was wondering, this is more for Dolores, I keep hearing about the Mayan calendar, December 21st, 2012, that's the year this piece is going to be ushered in. Do you know anything about that date? Or?
I'd rather save that for my talk tonight. Because I will that's what I'm going to go into. So tonight, if you're going, after this, after supper, if you're going to be here, if I forget to bring it up, ask me again, because that's part of the last book I wrote, and there's a great deal about all of it. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question. doctor, and that. First, let me say, all about treatment for one. I read a lot.
Thank you.
And my question is that you spoke on at length about healing the soul. And I'm 80 years old. Now I'm losing my hearing in one ear and my eye in another. And one of what else I'm losing. But
You look okay to me.
what can we do in order to stop this procedure of decay? Now, like I say, I'm being 80 years old. I don't think I can stop much of it, but I like your opinion, sir.
Well, I'm 81.
And I'm getting there. Okay. Okay.
What you're talking about is aging. And we can sometimes slow the process down by good nutrition and healthy habits and so forth. But you can't stop it, and really you wouldn't want to, because we're born to do certain things here on earth. Everybody comes in for a purpose. And when that purpose is fulfilled, or it's never going to be fulfilled because of inappropriate decisions that you've made in your life, the only thing left to do is to check out. That's called dying. Is to check out and go to another incarnation. So, I guess what I'm really boiling it down to is that you shouldn't be worrying about your question, the content of your question. It's what happens to everybody sooner or later. The timetable is different for different people. So just enjoy what you have as you go along. God, you see little teenagers that are trying to pretend they're grown-ups. And when they do, they cheat themselves out of being a teenager. There's plenty of time to be a grown-up. So enjoy your old age. Try not to be a burden to your wife. I did a reading several years ago, and a man and woman came in to see me. And the woman was alert and smiling, and a pretty lady. They were both in their 60s, I guess. And the husband's sitting there like this. And she said, well, ever since he turned such and such, why, he just doesn't interested in anything. He won't go anywhere with me and everything. And I had a psychic flash, and I said, well, your problem is that you've lived longer than your father, and you figure your life is over. So you've sort of quit. I said, if you want to die, die. And then your wife can find a nice man to finish out the rest of her life. And I thought she was going to split a gut to keep from laughing. I heard later that it worked. So just enjoy it. Don't worry about it. All this emphasis on staying young is a bunch of junk. Young people don't know anything. Women have to get to be at least 30 or 35 before I think they're beautiful. They've got to get a few lines in their face, some sense of character and personality, and this is beauty, not this China doll junk that they try to do.
You got a whole room of women now.
But I think your idea...
I'm a sculptor. I love to sculpture old people with wrinkles. And I think they're beautiful. And
But I think OT's idea of nutrition is also good. What your nutrition he was talking about, too.
So just enjoy it. Quit worrying about it.
Okay.
Dolores, I'm going to stand up and take the risk of sounding like I'm absolutely crazy. A lot of advanced being energy in my life. I'm being taken up. They're doing inoculations. I'm participating in human transports. I don't know where we're going. Lots of people are being moved somewhere right now.
You mean energy work or what?
I don't know.
She doesn't know.
It's just happening. And I know it's happening.
Can you explain that more? I don't understand.
Yeah, they had to tell her exactly what you're talking about.
I do dowsing, and I'll ask for angel presence, ET presence, and stuff is, and I asked the other night for the ET presence in my room to show itself, and a barcode started going up to the left side of my bed, a green barcode, and then there was a soft green glow. I woke up one night, my whole bedroom window shattered in, and I said, I lived with my mother, and I said, boy, she's going to be mad because there were new windows. And then when I woke up the next morning, they were fine. But this stuff is really happening.
Well, see, I see thousands and thousands of people, and a lot of them come to me with stories like this, thinking the ETs are doing things. And I said, they get blamed for a lot of things they don't do. They got a life of their own, and they're off doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And when we have sessions, usually what I'll find out, it's spirit beings trying to get your attention, or your guide or your guardian angel is trying to get your attention. Because they got better things to do. That's what I found anyway.
I'm getting the impression they're trying to help us.
Oh, definitely. That's what I go to lecture at all these UFO conferences, and I'm always talking about how positive they are and how I've seen them do healings. But it's a whole other thing. That's what I've written about that too. But they are definitely here to help us, but that is a different thing. But a lot of people who have these experiences like you're talking about with energy, sometimes it's just energy buildup. And when we do the sessions, we find out it's not aliens or ETs.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
A couple years ago, there were several UFOs over my house in Raton, New Mexico. And they were there every night. They stayed all winter. And I went out of body and went up to see what was going on. And I found that they were up there. What they were doing is they were extremely interested in trying to figure out a way to communicate with us. But the problem was not language. The problem was the way we structured our thoughts and our ideas. It was so foreign to them that they had no way of making meaningful communication. And what they were doing is trying to develop an alternate reality that would sort of be a halfway station between our way of thinking and theirs, so that some meaningful communication could take place. The other interesting thing was that I found out that they weren't biologic.
Well, some.
They were purely spiritual, and if they needed a physical body, they just sort of zapped one up by their intent. And it was sort of like living metal or plastic. They needed a hand, they'd create a hand. And they were there 2 winters, and I haven't seen them this winter, but they were, and apparently, according to a friend of mine, I'd been going up many nights and helping him set up this thing. I have no knowledge of that. I remember one thing is that I was trying to explain to him why when you have on cowboy boots, you clump your heels. They were quite interested in that. And in New Mexico, there's a lot of dissection of animals. And mostly they cut out anuses and parts of the body that act as sphincters because they don't have a physical body. So this is very interesting to them, and they're trying to study this. They're not at all violent. They're very peaceful, and they were from another galaxy.
But there's also many different kinds, but I've not encountered any negative either.
Yeah, they travel here. You remember in the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull?
Oh, yeah.
When Jonathan is talking to the old gull about how fast he could fly? And the old gull said, "No, Jonathan, fast is just being there." And so apparently by their intent, they just arrive.
Yeah. That's what they say. They travel by thought. And they said they're very amused by us. We have to put one word behind the other to make a sentence, to make a paragraph, to get a thought across. Our mouths are always moving. All these noises are coming out, and we have all these body language. They communicate thought to thought in concepts and symbols, whole blocks of information in one concept passed immediately. That's why it's hard for us to understand that. But so here we have to do it so slow.
But we do too.
Yeah.
But we're not aware of it.
Yeah,
When,
we do, but
when
yeah.
an infant is born, it is totally telepathic.
Yeah.
It knows exactly what its mother and father are thinking. And they imprint on the mother's attitude and the way she thinks, and this is the way it creates their lifestyle.
Yeah.
We never cease being telepathic, but as we learn language, the telepathy becomes subconscious, and we use language to make the communication. Mm-hmm. But if I think evil thoughts about you, at some level of your being, you get it. Mm-hmm. And you may turn out to not like me very well. Well, maybe you don't anyway. But you turn out... and you wouldn't know quite why. But telepathy goes on all the time. Telepathy occurs between plants. Animals talk via telepathy. And the growls and the body posture are just simply, in a sense, gestures. Uh-huh. So if an animal says to another one, I don't like you, and growls, that means he's furious. Uh-huh. So, but the communication is telepathic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I notice when I go to bed at night and I close my eyes, I get symbols that come through. They're like geometric, they're triangles.
This is happening all over the world.
It's like, and last night after being here all day, it was like an acid trip. They were big colors.
No.
And it seems to happen.
How did you know that?
Yeah. No, I've written about this in my books, and it's happening all over the world, that people are getting this. In fact, on my talk, we can probably talk about it, because there's a purpose for it, and there's a reason.
Yeah. When we travel, we ask for our trips usually back to be shortened, and we usually make it back like an hour and a half ahead of what you could ever make it. It's just the energy is
That's what I call condensed time and distorted time.
Yes, they usually check in after we've done something, spiritual like this. It's like, come on, let's go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're like downloading information.
That is what is happening, yeah.
Or what, but my mom said, no, just don't go around and talk about this to everybody.
All right. Tonight on my lecture, if you want to bring that up, because I've worked with that I've been working with the ET phenomena for 20 years. So
what's the name of it?
I found a lot of information.
What's ET?
You're safe. We're all a little crazy.
So I know how to tell the difference in you. No, you're not crazy, because I hear this constantly.
I would like to say this, that in the readings that we have done many years ago, we found that, yes, we have been visited by other people, from other universes. And the reason why they are here, they are afraid of us, because they don't know if they're going to blow themselves up or they're going to calm down. So therefore, they have sent help to instruct us to think right and to live right and to stop this nonsense. Because what happens on this planet Earth will affect everything in the universe.
Yes, that's what
everything.
They said.
All the thoughts that we have, all the evil thoughts, and even the good ones too, will go into the universe and will affect other parts, other civilizations. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we are being warned to shape up.
So they said it's a cosmic law. We can't interfere with the other planets the other dimensions.
That's right. Yeah.
So yes, this is what I've been working with, all of this. And
good.
Maybe in my talk you're going to get into these things. I'm not sure where I'm going to go with it after a while. But anyway, it's happening all over the world. So people think they're crazy and they're really not. Okay.
Yeah, this is a question for the doctor. When you gave your lecture, you
said the statistics that almost 90% of Americans have been emotionally, physically, or sexually abused. I had been a psychic for many.
I'm sorry, I missed.
You talked about almost 90% of Americans have been physically, emotionally.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My question for you, in my day-to-day work, I tend to attract a lot of people that have been sexually abused. And I find that one of the constants is that they lie. There's constant lying going on. And my question to you is, how would you advise, I want to know, A, with the muscle testing, how can you tell the person is lying to you or telling you the truth? And the other thing is, do you have any advice on how to be emotionally supportive? Because my problem is I find that these people habitually lie.
Okay.
And I want to.
Well, that's easy to check, and you don't do it with the client because we're all in communication. So I could muscle check. Sorry,
Justine.
I forgot my own name.
It's all right. Justin. You can call me Diamond Little.
Diamond Little here.
Okay.
I can muscle check her and ask her a question about the other individual, and she can give me a valid answer. And if the arm remains strong, it's a yes. If it gets weak, it's a no. You can find, a lot of times I would ask questions about my patients and I wouldn't bother to check them. I just checked my nurse because I knew the patient wouldn't believe me if I did this hocus pocus with them. I had a chiropractor friend who never adjusted anybody who was a malingerer because he'd ask them with some muscle testing if they were telling the truth. And he'd get the right answer. What's your second part of that question?
The second part is in terms of being a psychic clairvoyant. A lot of people that come to me for reading have been abused or emotionally abused. And I don't know on what level how to assist them in their own healing process except to open up and talk about it. But I was interested when you said those high statistics because it seems to me that there's a cycle of abuse that just continually goes on and on and on.
Yeah, there is.
What's the modality for healing?
I know examples where it's gone through 3 generations that I know of and can determine, It's a tough one. I can't give you a quick, easy answer. I don't know. We'll talk afterward, maybe. But
and there's so many different modalities that you can refer them to. Somebody like Aaron that goes into the Akashic records and here's the root cause for that. Somebody that could work with the tarot and somehow get into the archetypes and try and help them see where they can go to and how they can open up to their wholeness, or send them to Dolores. Or better yet, take Dolores' class and learn how to do it yourself.
Oh, I want to add one other thing. I had a patient in my practice that was convinced that her father had molested her. And under hypnosis, it turned out that she had been molested all right, but it wasn't by her father in this incarnation. It was in another incarnation. And both of their fathers happened to be redheads. And the one that molested her had a beard. And the crisis in this life occurred during the centennial when her father started growing a beard. So here's 2 bearded, redheaded guys, and so she assumed that this father had molested her, and it really wasn't. It was another lifetime. So maybe they aren't really lying. Maybe they're just mixed up.
Yeah, that kind of, when you said lying, because I do what you do, obviously, that disturbs me. What do you mean they're lying? About being molested? Or just liars in general?
In their day-to-day reality, I just had someone start working for me in the last week, and when she came for the interview, she would zone out. She was always looking the other way, and I just knew. I said, you've been molested, haven't you? Because she just wasn't physically present. And when I would ask her a direct question, the first instinct is not to tell the truth. It's just to cover. I don't know if it's from the traumatization.
It's part of abuse. It's definitely a part of abuse. But when you work with people like that, what I do, I get a lot of that. And I start out, sometimes it'll even be as bad as incest. I see it, you know. And I think one of the things in life is that there's growth. When you're abused, I think what it does, I know what it does, to speak frankly. I know what it does. It opens up your psychic energy. It opens up, you're listening all the time. You're feeling it. You start to feel energy because you're afraid. And when you get older, when you're around certain people, you don't know how to be. You do not know how to be because nothing you ever did was right. So you have to learn how to be a certain way. When I work with people like that, I start at the very beginning. They tell me they were molested by their father. What I try to do is tell them that they don't have to feel they have to make up. I send them to therapy A. That is the biggest thing you can do for them is find a really good psychotherapist and send them. But you can also soothe them. Our job as readers is not to frighten people or even to judge them. It's to help them find their way through the dark. And when I get people with a lot of, incest or physical and sexual abuse, I always try first two things. I try to tell them it's not their fault because that's what they need to hear. And the second thing I tell them is they do not have to, they can be angry. They are allowed to hate. That person, if they want to hate them, that's fine. But don't let it spill into the rest of your life. And then I teach them to release it, let it go. Because those people don't belong here. Those people that are molesters and thieves and they don't belong with us. They are very young souls. We have been around many lifetimes. They're new. And our duty is to try to get the world the way it's supposed to be. And people like that, they don't have a place in our world. And when I have people like that come to me, because do you think I can see it? I tell them. I had one guy, remember, his wife, he was beating her every week, and I told her, leave him. Finally, she left him. So he came in, he was going to tell me off, and I said, what gives you the right to beat her up? You're 6'2", you must weigh 250 pounds. That girl can't weigh more than 110. What gives you the right to beat her up? I want you to tell me that. I was like that. Next thing I know, he's coming to all my classes, and he's all into it, and he changed. But we have to guide him to change. If you're going to be a psychic, you have to guide him.
Well, I had a good friend who was a nurse practitioner, and she came to the clinic and spent 3 months one summer with me. And one thing and another, and I talked her into being a chiropractor. She'd never occurred to her. And so I didn't hear from her, and when I wrote my first book, I got a box of books with a question to sign them and mail them on to Dr. So-and-so, and which I did, and we made contact, and she said something about having had a hysterectomy. Well, she was a young woman. And I thought, she was sexually abused because cancer of the cervix is very frequently associated with sexual abuse. And this is the one way to handle it. If I get rid of my uterus, I won't be attractive. And so how do you get rid of your uterus? Well, you get a cancer. Well, she was a gorgeous young woman, and everybody loved her. She had the most successful practice in the state. And but we never talked about this abuse. And she was one of these people who was doing things for everybody. My God, I got Christmas cards and birthday cards and Halloween cards and Easter cards and letters. And she did this with everybody. And about a year ago, she went out into the woods and took a rifle and killed herself.
Oh, wow.
And she'd been sexually abused by her father and had never been able to talk about it to anybody. Well, one of my friends channeled her after she killed herself. And she said, well, thank Dr. Bonnet, because if it hadn't been for his love and support, I would have done this 20 years ago.
Oh, that's nice.
So here's an entire life that's shattered because of this SOB that molested her. And she was always doing something for her father. He was such a nice person, Yeah, he sure was, yeah.
Another thing, if you're going to be a reader for people, I strongly recommend that you read DSM-4, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for psychologist. It gives you it tells you a lot about personalities. And I would also suggest that you read Inside the Criminal Mind, because you're going to get people who are twisted, and you have to straighten the twist. You're the psychic, and I hate that word. I wish there was a better word. You're the card reader, you're the clairvoyant, or the clairsentient. You've got people, most people aren't like that. Most people are good. But you obviously are getting some people that have a lot of issues. You've got to be able to help those people. You've got to get yourself a stack of business cards for a good therapist, hand it to them. We're not therapists, we're clairsentients. You have to pass that work to where it belongs. There's therapists out there. And actually, I find out where the free ones are, in my community, the free stuff is, because people who are abused do tend to lie, because they lie to protect themselves when they were children. And it's a defense mechanism that they have to learn to undo. And they need help psychologically.
Yeah.
That's when you send them on. You're welcome.
Right on.
Okay, any more questions here? Who's next? Back over here, okay.
First of all, thank you all and bless you. We're so grateful.
Get the microphone up.
Yes, thank you all and bless you. We're so grateful.
Thank you.
My question is, at any level, I'm a nurse, and I'm wondering if any of you see the collapse of the healthcare system locally and what is going to happen? It is in such a mess, and we're treating only physical bodies.
I didn't get the question.
I think we're in a just positive direction.
The healthcare is going to collapse the way it is now.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's what I think we're in a positive direction. I think, more and more practitioners are recognizing the usefulness of alternative therapies and complementary therapies. We have a long way to go yet. And I hope that, like I always say, I hope I'm alive to see the true, the full transformation. But I think we're in a positive direction.
Well, while I was waiting for my wife to come out of surgery the other day with her broken hip, I picked up a magazine in the waiting room. And there was a fascinating article, and I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. I don't remember who the guy was. One of the fellows was a fellow named Jack Paradise at the University of Pittsburgh. He's a pediatrician. And he had done a study evaluating this practice of putting tubes in little kids' eardrums. Millions of dollars are spent every year to do this. It was the accepted thing to do, and Paradise's study revealed that it had never helped anybody. It doesn't work.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And another guy developed a computer program and a statistical study to show that a tremendous amount of things that doctors do have never worked, they won't work, they can't work, but they're considered to be the standard therapy, so that's what they do. Look at all the little kids with cross eyes that get operations to straighten their eyes out. That's not the answer to the problem, and it never works. They can be made cosmetically look okay, but it never gives them proper binocular vision. You go to a developmental optometrist, he can cure the kid in 6 months without any surgery at all. But he's just an optometrist, so you got to go to an ophthalmologist and have your eye muscles cut on and get the long ones shortened, and it's total BS. It never worked and it never will work. But it's standard accepted medical care. So that's why I said I hope it collapses, because it really doesn't have any validity for remaining. Doctors are going to have to take a different approach to medicine. They're going to have to read something besides medical journals, because the answers aren't in the medical journals, and learn what you guys know.
But OT, this is a question I was going to wait till the end, was talking about the future of medicine. But I have lots of clients who come to me who are doctors, And they tell me they want out of the medical part with the drugs. They said they know it doesn't work and they're tired of it, and they're wanting to go over into alternative and the natural. One said,
you can't make a blanket statement because a lot of drugs work and they're very
yeah,
good.
there's a lot of good ones out there, but some of them are realizing.
But there's a lot of drugs that kill you.
Well, some of them are realizing now it's not doing any good, and they're deciding to leave it and go into the natural healing.
Yeah.
One doctor said he got tired of signing death certificates because he said he knew as soon as they put anybody on chemo, they would die. It was a death sentence. But he had to put on there they died of cancer, they didn't die of chemo. Because the doctors only have 2 ways of curing cancer, chemo and radiation, where the naturopaths and the homeopaths have over 200 things they can prescribe for cancer. And so I'm noticing that in my own work, they're coming to me and saying they're wanting out. But I'm working now with a group of doctors and psychiatrists in Moscow. They told me they're forming an organization worldwide to organize all of the healers of the world. Those who are into natural healing, alternative, herbalists. They say they don't want any fakes, but they're trying to organize them all together. Like Doctors Without Borders, they're going to call it Healers Without Borders. And they wanted me to help get this going in the United States. And one thing this doctor told me, the one who was heading the whole thing, he said the year 2000 statistics said in the United States over 42% of the people believed in alternative healing. And I said, that big of a percentage? They don't tell us that. They always say, oh, it's, alternative healing is no good. They try to push it down and try to tell us the natural herbs won't work. I said, that's a big percentage. He said that was the 2000 statistics. So they know more people in the United States are going that way than they're going to admit. Maybe that's why they're getting scared and pushing all of these drugs.
To answer her question, I have a lot of contact with the medical community.
Yeah.
And because my daughter is the coordinator of vascular surgery at University Hospital in Cleveland, and so you kind of like hook into these people, and you know the doctors, and you know the NPs, and you know the nurses and everything. The truth of it is, they all went out because it's not them. It's the upper people, it's the kings of swords and the queens of swords who are the power people. It's not the doctors themselves. I know more doctors that want to say, I want out of here, I can't do this. They leave our state, Ohio, because malpractice insurance is off the top, and they go to Indiana where it isn't, and it's turned into a big game. And the truth of it is, the doctors themselves are really good people. They really are. I sit there and I say, you're a king of wands, you're a king of pentacles. They're good guys.
They're doing what they were taught.
That's right. And they're listening to
the
the bottom line is money. They're listening to it. I think it's going to collapse because you know what? I just went in the hospital a couple weeks ago for one night. Now this is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. I accidentally, because I'm always working myself to death, took the wrong insulin. There's 2 kinds of insulin. One's a short acting, one's a long acting. And I usually take like 7 units of the short acting before I eat or anything. And I take 35 units of the long acting. Well, like an idiot, I pushed 35 units of short acting into myself. I called my physician and he goes, yeah, you better come to the hospital. So they put on some of those sugar things, and I laid there for, the evening, for the night. I got the bill. It was $3,700. And I'm like,
Lord.
What the hell did you do? I laid there in my sweats. They pricked my finger every 45 minutes. They gave me what do you call that thing? IV.
Intravenous, yeah.
Of some kind of, it was on 30. It's ridiculous. And I was like, who in the heck is getting this money? It's going to collapse because you know what?
I have to pay the bill.
Well, you know what? I have insurance, and that's the problem. Look at the people who don't. What do you do then?
Well, another thing that plays into this, it's a multifaceted problem.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
Patients expect and demand a lot of stuff. In 1950, Now remember, that's half a century ago. I heard a panel discussion by several doctors and about medical care in the United States. And they said the United States was the best place in the world to get sick if you had some exotic, rare, serious disease. Imagine, it's 1950. And they said that the diagnostic and treatment facilities were unbelievable. But it was the worst country in the world to have if you had some minor problem. Like you.
I should have stayed home and ate 5 candy bars, right?
Yeah. So, because they said the patients demand it and the doctors go along with it to expect all of these expensive tests. You sprain your ankle a little bit and the doctor doesn't even look at you. He gets an x-ray first. I've had people come into the emergency room who'd been in a little fender bender of an automobile accident. They didn't have a bump, a sprain, a scratch, or anything. And I came in to be x-rayed to see if I've been hurt. I said, well, where do you hurt? I don't hurt anywhere, but I want to be x-rayed. Well, what do you want x-rayed? Well, I don't know. You're the doctor. X-ray me to see if I'm okay. And most of the time, they give them a chest x-ray and a neck x-ray and, run up a big bill for no reason except the demand. And the damn lawyers are sitting there and are going to file a malpractice suit if you don't do all of these things.
Okay, okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, Pat's been waiting very patiently with his hand in the air. Okay.
Yeah, very nice. I'm the king of South
Okay.
The large pinnacle.
Really, I'm Pollyanna. I think Abraham, who's channeled through Esther Hicks, has a great attitude. You don't focus in on what's broken. You focus in on wonderful things that are happening in the medical field, like Christine, who's bringing in a new way of birthing people. The skio machine out there, who's doing a new way of diagnosing. The healers, Dr. Larry, somebody who's very much into prayer, and Fossey, right. And you hold that intention that the medical field will transform into something wondrous, and let God and Spirit do all the hows. You pitch the ball and let them hit the home run.
Something interesting that came through in my work was that we were told there were going to be many more women doctors than men, because the women are the ones who create life anyway, and we're the ones who are more sensitive. And now they've said, what was it, some of the Harvard or Yale, one of the medical schools for the first time have had more women doctors graduating than men. So it's going along with that. They said, who knows? Okay, go ahead.
Several years ago, we did a whole reading on color and music therapy. And we published a little book, no longer available, but somebody used that. And they had very good results. No medicine, no hospital, no doctors. The people were healed, and there were some traumatic healings taking place. That was just simple color and music. But the music has to be from the classical side. No rock and roll. Yeah, and the color, it was a very simple, we called it an attunement chapel. You just hang white sheets from the ceiling in a circle. And then you have on the outside, you have the colored lights. You can get any color you want. And while the patient is inside, you play the music that you have attuned to. You have intuitively selected the music that that person needs. And people have found very excellent results from that. Yeah.
Okay, somebody over here? Okay.
A little bit louder, Rick.
Women graduates. My mother was taught me that one to the major, the majority of that so there was probably about 60 graduates and a good percentage of them were from India or Pakistan or Africa, which not in West Texas was the school. But my comment to her was, well, what's so amazing about that? The original healers were there in the thrones that helped deal with the power of taking away. There was classified religions.
Yeah.
But I wanted to also add to what Pat said, there is a lot of good things going on in medicine. As evidenced by the number of massage inside hospitals. We used them, my sister was in the hospital, and those that we used more probiotics, for example, to try to stop the diarrhea caused by the antibiotics she was getting. It was different from the actual bacillus. It was the feed to stop that. When I was in nursing 26 years ago, that was just known to be the main and the last thing I think is inherent on us in this culture of labor that we don't use terms, exclusively use terms like alternative medicine. Because as Dr. Bond said, there are a lot of good things in regular medicine.
Yeah.
I think the word complementary medicine needs to be accepted a lot better than alternative medicine. It has more acceptance. Yeah, good idea.
This is the time of the sacred feminine. We've got, the Da Vinci Code, and I think it's just bringing out women. And women are coming back. Women are stronger. And I'm not a feminist or anything like that. I just know that when it comes right down to it, who does all? No offense, guys. Who is the one when the kids are sick? It's always the mother, always. And yet the doctor's a man. Kids get afraid. Women belong healing. That's what they belong to do. And like, I don't know your name, said, is that the Crohn's? And he's right. And the herbalists and the white witches, they were all healers. Why not now? And most of the people that I know that are coming into my circle are totally into, I love your idea, complementary medicine. Because they're saying, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? And they're right. It's right. Women are coming into a time when there will be peace. If we had a balanced yin and yang, there would be no war, none. Because the male-female energy would balance itself. We just let our universe get on to a male energy. And this is not offensive to the guys. You know how much testosterone it takes to go into the army? Come on. Really. It's a guy thing, And to me, when men have equal power with women, we'll probably have a great deal of peace. I believe that.
Well, the women that are going into medicine now, I think, are a different breed.
Yeah?
When I was in medical school 60 years ago, had 14 or 15 girls in class. They were weird. And they had gone for really strange reasons. One girl had been hurt by a pediatrician when she was a little girl. So she wanted to be a doctor so that no child would ever be hurt again. Well, this isn't rational. We had several girls who thought that the only way you can properly discharge your obligations is to be a medical missionary and go off somewhere. Well, that's not true either. They were really strange people.
Did you get any that just wanted to marry a rich doctor?
Well,
that's what I
don't think any of them did that. But I don't know many of them got married.
Well, see, they were in that area.
They're just totally different women now. I gave up my license when I retired because I didn't want the temptation of dabbling. and I have high blood pressure and I have to go get a prescription once in a while. And I chose a female doctor. And she's young. She hadn't been in practice long. She's very interested and she listens to me. When my former doctor quit and went down to the University of New Mexico to teach, I said to him, who am I going to see that can tolerate me? And they had a couple, and he said, well, I think Michelle would do a good job. And I like her. But she certainly isn't like anything I went to school with. So I think we got a different breed of women.
My son's girlfriend, she just graduated from Case Western Reserve, which, if you know anything like about the schools, it's a major medical school in Cleveland. She's a nurse practitioner. Everything she learned is in conjunction with complementary medicine. She would tell me, and I'd tell her what was wrong with me, whatever, at the moment. And she'd say, oh, take this, this, and this. She knew every alternative. She learned at a Case. And she's going to go to work now at Metro, which is a trauma hospital, and get to put it to use. And she said she knows both. That's what they're teaching now, both. Yeah. Yeah.
Things are changing slowly.
Right. I hope we're around to see it, though, you know?
I plan to live to be 120.
We're fighting to get it, and all these other ones are going to benefit. We want to, yeah. Well, you're young. You're going to benefit.
Okay, who's next? What other questions?
I have one more question.
He's got one.
Here's John with this great tan.
This doesn't bother me a little bit. The doctor mentioned that all time is instant. In other words, we only had time on Earth elongated for us to learn from our point of view how to go and stuff like that. But if all time is instant, then can we change or all justice written in stone, or do some of them shift with the gel breeze?
And what's written in stone?
The destiny, are they written in stone, or can we change the destiny?
Nothing's written in stone.
Everything's changeable.
Wow. I don't have a couple hours to go into this. And it'd take that long probably for you to get it. But everything exists as a probability. This is not the real world. The real world is a psychological network of probabilities that is infinitely vast. So if it doesn't take up any space, it's a psychological relationship. What we do to create our reality is we dip into this vast field of probabilities and choose the one we want. And the simple act of choosing this probability then becomes a reality in this dimension. So it's possible to jump probabilities. And I can give you an example. When I was during the Korean War, I was in the Marines down at Camp Lejeune, and we were making a landing off of a troop ship in very heavy water. We had 16-foot swells. And this meant that the landing craft was rising and falling, and with each trip, it would go smashing against the side of the ship. So it was extremely important to keep the cargo net inside the boat. Otherwise, you might find yourself between the boat and the landing craft and getting smashed. Well, I was hurrying down the cargo net, and my corpsman, I looked down, they were keeping it in the boat, and I kept climbing down. All of a sudden, I realized my feet were in the ocean, and I was between the landing craft and the ship. And I had the split second, my God, I'm going to be crushed, and the next split second thinking, no, I'm okay. And that fast, I was stepping off the cargo net into the landing craft. And I didn't climb up, and the landing craft went crashing back. And I thought, what happened? I didn't know. Now I know is that I shifted probabilities. The probability of landing but ending up between them, or the probability of being safe in the boat. I didn't have any reason to be hurt. There was no karmic reason to die at that moment. I hadn't planned on it. And so I just shifted a probability in which I ended up where I was supposed to be. So we can do this, and people do it all the time. And this is one of the answers to miracles. Right, they don't. I knew a young couple was driving across the mountains one winter time. It was extremely icy. They were on a secondary road, and there was no guardrail. There's just a wide shoulder, about 20, 30 feet, and a drop-off. And they started to make a turn, and the car didn't turn. It just started skidding. And it skidded right across, out off the road, across the shoulder, and within feet of going over the edge, the young man silently screamed to himself, "No!" And suddenly he realized he's on the highway, he's making the turn, there's no evidence of any skid. He went right around without any problem. And his wife, who was with him, all she'd experienced was looking over the precipice, and the next instant she's 30 feet from it. Mm-hmm. Now, if another car had happened to see them, and they were the only one on the highway, they would have said, "Boy, my eyes must be playing tricks with me. I thought that car was skidding over the precipice. But I guess I better get a cup of coffee and get awake." Mm-hmm. So he wasn't looking at it in a religious context, but that would constitute a miracle. And what he did is simply shifted probabilities. And since everything exists in probabilities, it's easily done.
Well, that happened to my brother-in-law, too, in Kansas City. He was walking across the street, and he looked around. There wasn't any cars, and then he was right in the middle of the street, and all of a sudden, here was a car right next to him. He knew there was no way he could keep from being hit. He didn't know where it came from. He closed his eyes just to, wait for the impact. And then he opened his eyes, the car was over here, and it was pulling into this gas station. And the guy gets out like he didn't even see him. Now, did the car go through him?
Nope.
Was he removed, or did he go into another dimension at that time?
The car had never been there, because he changed a probability into which that never occurred.
Or he went into another dimension in that split second, but it shows it happens all the time. It wasn't time for him to go.
And time doesn't exist.
Yeah. The ETs say that all the time.
Linear time, in which one thing occurs after another, is an illusion.
See, that's what the ETs say. They said time is an illusion. Man is probably the only species in the universe found a way to measure something that does not exist.
That's true.
But we're trapped in it.
We're trapped in it, and I hope you talk about it a little bit tonight, because there is supposedly what we're all experiencing in many ways, that there's a paradigm shift, there's a vibrational shift, a dimensional shift going on that is affecting time. I don't know whether it's just because I'm over 50, but time is rapidly speeding by.
It is.
When I try and do two tasks, which could have taken an hour or two in the old days, now it's 5:30 in the evening already.
That's what time is speeding up.
It is due to something there. So
it is speeding up.
Hopefully you'll talk about that, because I think that will tie back into your question where you talk about, is anything written in stone? And it will be evidence that it's not, by the fact that we will be able to instantly create things soon as these shifts happen.
Yeah.
You can make time stop.
Take time and repush it just a little bit to prevent an accident.
Why not?
Yeah.
Well, free will, and if it's not your time to go, that's why these things, people say, I'm afraid to travel, something could happen, and they don't want to leave their house. You hear about cars crashing into somebody's living room and killed a man sitting in his living room. If it's your time to go, you're going to go no matter where you are.
You change it, doesn't it, then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because,
stop time for
but in the meantime, you would have missed all of the fun you could have been having by traveling and doing these different things, because you're living in fear.
If you're running late in the morning, I've noticed this. I've known it, I know it in my head, even I didn't learn it anywhere. And say I have a client coming at 10 o'clock and it's 5 to 10 and I still am not complete. I'll look and I'll say, please slow the time down. I swear to God, I am ready every time. You just ask to slow it down and it slows down. We have control of that time thing. We really do. And I don't know how I know that, but I'm sure everybody else here must know it. Just stop it. So you're not late. Just shift it. It's easy. It's almost magical, isn't it?
Yeah.
When I drive from Raton up to Pueblo, I play a little game with myself.
Oh, me too.
And I look at my watch and try to figure out exactly when I'll get to Pueblo. And I'm usually right. And one day I was going up with my wife, and she thinks all this is a bunch of BS. But I was visiting about various things, metaphysical things, and I reached Pueblo, and I looked down at my watch, and it was exactly the time that I thought. It was like 10:15. And the next instant, I was totally disoriented. I had absolutely no idea where I was. And I said, "Where are we? I thought we were just coming into Pueblo." She said, "Well, we're through Pueblo. We're on the north end of Pueblo. There's Sam's over there." And I looked over and I saw Sam's, and I got oriented, looked at my watch. It was exactly 11:15. And it takes about 15 minutes to drive from the south end of Pueblo to the north.
Was it 11:15 the first time?
Yeah, 11:15 the first time. It was still 11:15. And I made a 15-minute drive through Pueblo with no time lost.
That's the only way to travel.
I'm going to try to use that going home.
I always tell myself if the trip's like 12 hours, I'll go a couple hours. Then I'll pretend I just left the house. And if you pretend you just left, you're not all tired. I don't know what it is. It's a mind game.
Sure.
Just pretend you just left your house, even if you're 2 hours away. And I pretended I left my house. We went to Florida to be at a lecture or a book show, a trade show at Dolores. 12 hours in the car. I pretended it 12 times. Like, I just left my house. But you know what? It gets you there. And you're not that, like a kid I am. Oh, when are we going to be there? You're not like that.
It works.
My question is for any of the panelists. I was wondering, there's must be a relationship not only of one with the one or work with one world or child with one, as to physical births or being born at first, what does that say to the mother, to the parents?
Well, I think it's very multifaceted. I think the mother has a lot to do, and her health and her beliefs have a lot to do with the presentation of the child, as well as any complications that may happen. It's really a multifaceted thing. It could be something that, like I said, is ownership of the mother or ownership of the baby. And there's really no way of telling unless you really do some type of a holistic evaluation on the mother, so you check her. And if still something is going wrong, like a breech presentation or the umbilical cord, then perhaps it's something that the baby had to work out.
It helps us to remember that we're so multidimensional. You were asking, can you change your destiny? Well, you can take two people right in a row, and one person who would appear like could change their destiny, and they, for example, got rid of their cancer. The next person doesn't, and the next person does, and the next person doesn't. There's so many other facets going on in our levels of soul, our Christ levels, our other different levels that we have. There's so many angels around that are helping us, that know this information and that information that helps us along our path that we aren't even aware of. So when you see these babies come in, and the mothers and the fathers and the doctors and the rooms, and
you know what?
So many
That's
factors.
so true. That's so true. It could be something that new obstetrician needs to learn about. Maybe that new obstetrician needs to learn how to deal with the breech presentation. Maybe it's something that the nurse has to deal with in turn, learning how to assist that doctor or a midwife. So it's so multifaceted, nothing is ever clear cut. You look at all of the facets and you do the best that you can in understanding. But ultimately, if you don't understand it, you just got to let it go and hope for the best, yeah.
Okay. This is going to have to be the last question. Okay.
Christine, last Tuesday night, I belong to a group that does healing meditation, and I was down to facilitate a meditation, a healing meditation on a 5-day-old infant that had everything wrong with it: cleft palate, cleft feet, cavity and a rectum, and they were taking her to do genetic testing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Jesus, what do we do with her? And he said, take me to the neonatal unit. So we all left the group in our soul forms. We left bodies behind, went to the neonatal unit with Jesus, legions of angels, while we were there, I said, let's go through the whole hospital, Arkansas Children's Hospital. We just swarmed with a spiritual energy, and I really feel like we probably had some profound healings go on that night. There was a lot of tears, not just but silent, and he, we all witnessed him taking that baby Jesus in his arms. And I really think that if I could get a hold of some nurses down there, they'd probably tell us that something happened.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Well, Harold McCoy over here in Fayetteville, the ORI is the Ozark Research Institute. He teaches how to do healing thought even at distance and send energy. And he has healed cleft palates from a distance. So the energy of your mind is so powerful. We just don't realize don't use it. We haven't tapped into it. Okay, I think we're going to have to stop now. I went over because we started later. But Harold was wondering, what are we going to think to ask? And everything, the time just flew. Okay.